Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at the DC Designs F-4 Phantom. Now this is quite a piece of Cold War history we have here, and it's definitely a really neat plane with a lot of kind of cool details. Definitely not study level by any means, but it doesn't mean that it isn't still a ton of fun to fly as well as kind of experience. So let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, they gave us two versions. So we have the E and we have the J. It's worth noting, though, they're not really the E and the J. They're really like kind of an amalgamation of the two different units, kind of combined into one, but that's okay. Namely, of course, with the E model, when we float to the back seat here, yes, they did take the time to put all these little details in here. There's actually all these switches do work. They don't do anything, unfortunately, but they do work, and it's actually really, really fun because, you can come in here and look at all the different details you've probably not seen in a Phantom before, which is cool. The little radar handle and everything like that. You'll notice we have no control stick for the E model, but that's okay. One thing we do have in the back that's actually really cool, though, is they did give us an inertial navigation unit, and it does work. I feel like this would be quite a video for another day kind of a thing. But the cool thing here is the way this works is real simple. All you would do is this is your starting position. This is your target. What you would do is you dial this in. You could do this manually, which is kind of a pain in the butt to do, by the way. But the simplest method, of course, is what you could do is you could actually go into the flight simulator menu and then pick a destination before you start your flight. And that's kind of an easy way to sort of get that all set up for you. And the one thing you got to do is you got to remember to turn this thing on. Otherwise, it doesn't do anything. So just kind of keep that in mind. All right, let's jump up front. So as we all know, the F-4 Phantom is a cart start airplane, and we don't have a cart to plug into, but that's okay because the designers of this took some time to sort of integrate a lot of that stuff into the airplane, so we wouldn't have to worry so much about a lot of those little tiny details. So to get this thing started, pretty straightforward. We're just going to come down here and get our two generator switches. So we have this little thing. This is option selector. And over it goes click, and now what that's going to do is it's going to give us some electrical power. You can listen. Sounds wonderful, doesn't it? So what we're going to do now is we're going to come over on this side. They have a little button here to actually hide this throttle if it kind of gets in your way. One of those things that you might have to do depending on kind of the scenario. But it's really easy to start. All you're going to do is on the back of the throttles, there's these little ignition buttons. So we just pop those on. We come down here. We have the engine master. We're going to go pop those two on here. And then you just have an engine start button. So what I'm going to do before I do that, of course, is I'll let everybody around us kind of know that we're getting started here. So I'm going to pop on these two lights. Just kind of give them a little heads up. Then we're just going to come down here and watch how easy this thing is to start. You hit that. Just going to give it a few moments to kind of build up the RPM. You'll hear it kind of crunching behind us. There it goes. This is a very angry plane. Now, when you listen from the exterior view, it makes a lot of clicking and clacking. It's kind of fun. And all we're going to do is take over the detent. And what's going to happen is we're going to get fuel flow, and this thing is going to go racing across, and we're looking for about 50%. And, of course, we're going to get a bunch of angry lights that are going to all come off on us in half a second here. No big deal, kind of a thing like that. And there it goes. Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Absolutely loud. I'm going to go turn the thing down just a little bit so I can hear myself think here. That's pretty good. Tank check looks good. That looks good to me. Of course, we have a little radar here, and I'll show you how that works in a minute. It's nothing fancy, to say the least here, but that's perfectly fine. All right, I heard my click, which means we're started. We're going to come over and hit the other one now. Yeah, like I said, nothing sophisticated. Very basic start here. We don't need the card or anything like that. There you go. We can hear the engine's finally finished spooling up. We're going to move it off the detent in just a minute there, but that's looking pretty good right now. I'm not going to stress about it too much. We have a couple cool things that they've kind of given us to here, but obviously until I get some power up, there it goes. Fuel flow, finally. Until we get a little bit of power, we're not going to be able to play some of these things. But one of the things they gave us is this little radar display. And one of the reasons the radar display is kind of fascinating is it acts kind of as our tactical map for when we're cruising around, kind of a thing like that. And what they did is they built it so that there's a bunch of kind of different modes. Of course, we also have a gun sight. Until we get a little more electrical power, we're not going to get anything like that. But you can actually use the gun sight here for the purposes of kind of getting all those different components. There we go. I'll go snap it over to the ready position, and now we got our engines running. But we can actually go ahead and change these modes. And what they did is they made this so that, like, when I go to the left here, I can show this is my basic mode, and you can see here kind of a bunch of our attack hands. This is our ground radar mode. This is scanning for bacon. We even have a little handy dandy little TV mode if we want to utilize it, which is just kind of cool if you ask me. I just kind of like how they integrated that. There's not a lot of other stuff that this does, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on kind of who you ask, sort of a thing. I actually got to turn the volume down a little bit more because that's positively deadening. But once we got all that set up, we're pretty much good to go. We can leave these switches off. Obviously, we're not going to change anything here, and we can pretty much get ready to actually get this thing taxiing. So you can see here, we're up here at Barnes, which is a great airport for us. Plenty of room, of course, in the old days. They had all sorts of fun bombers and things like that. I'll go ahead and kick this over to the side. There's this little button that we want to be kind of mindful of as we're working here. We can, of course, hide the yoke if it kind of gets in our way. Coming down here, of course, we have a bunch of different options for all these different switches and things like that. I also like how they like selected heading, how they just kind of like sneak these sort of things in here. And one thing that we can do, of course, we can select our desired navigational mode. So if we wanted to, we can do ATT. We got our heading hole, we have our TACAN, of course we want to switch over to nav here. And what that will do is that'll go ahead and select the specific point that we have at this particular point. So let's go down to VOR2. This will be VOR, this will be nav mode. You can see just a little bit farther away, about 13. TACAN mode, we're at the base basically, so the TACAN's going to be kind of sitting there all there. So I'm going to go over to nav mode. There we go, it looks pretty good to me. Go climb the back seat, make sure everything's set. And again, we can take some time to actually come here and change these digits and dial these items in directly, which takes kind of a long time. So I'm not going to stress too much about that aspect of this aircraft. Like I said, that would take us a long time to get all squared away. So I'm not really going to stress about it too much. Instead, I'm just going to kind of enjoy the flight sort of as it is, of the fact that they have like little missile powers and stuff like that. If you want to kind of role play dropping bombs and stuff like that, which pretty cool. All right, so we got to get out of this parking spot, and this is going to be difficult. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hold down the brake. This is going to be the easiest way to do it. Go ahead and give myself left engine only. And I'm just going to tap the brake, and we're just going to use this as a way to kind of get us around the corner here. If you do not have differential brakes, easiest way to do this is on your keyboard. You have the minus key. You can just stomp on the minus key a bunch of times until this thing begins to behave. And again, I'm using a little bit of help from my left engine here to kind of help us along, which makes this much simpler than it could be. All right, delightful. Getting this thing airborne, of course, so we're going to go ahead and pop the flaps all the way down. That's important for us. Just kind of enjoy a nice little taxi wheel. If you take a look at it, it's just a little bit ahead of us, which is kind of neat, because that means where my dashboard is, so to speak, where my little kind of displays are, is where we're sitting as far as the nose goes. I'm going to go ahead and give this thing a gentle little tug here, and we're going to make our way kind of over to the runway itself. I just love the fact the needles are like, they're not that they're delayed. They have a little bit of hesitation, but they'd be a little bit bouncier in these old J79 jet engines here. Get yourself squared away. Good old-fashioned runway 20. We'll go ahead and hold short. Again, nice Air Force brakes there. Nice Air Force brakes. Delightful. So we'll just go ahead and run through a couple little checks. That all looks good. That all looks good to me. We got this set the way that we want it to be set. That looks good. Again, it'll be fun if we get bomb missiles and stuff like that. Come down here. Of course, we have oxygen tests. Oxygen test, that we can shut that one off. We get that all preset and ready to go for us. I like how we have a little button that just says 0. Oxygen, it's already on, so we can increase this a little bit if we needed to for a particular reason that we think we need it. Like I said, not too worried about that. Our canopy's closed. All that good stuff is all set. We got a couple little things. We can actually turn the chocks on and off, which is kind of a nice little touch that they kind of built into it. We can hit our landing lights if we had a specific frequency or anything like that. So if we want to do 27 X-ray, we can come in here and pop these on. Again, depending on what we're trying to achieve for our given flight here. That all looks good to me. That all looks good to me. Power looks good to me. That looks all set. All right, okay. Takeoff heading, I'll go ahead and dial that in real quick here. After getting in the air, we're going to be coming down basically south-southeast today. Go ahead and swing that over to about a 120 there. Yeah, it looks pretty groovy. Delightful. All right, so we're going to get our flaps down all the way for takeoff. And you can see they're already sitting there ready to go. Now we just got to go. Love that, because just kind of like, it goes up and then it comes back down. Such a great touch. Get that nice little initial burn of fuel, then of course it settles down a little bit. All right, we're gonna line ourselves up. Remember, runway behind us is worthless, so we're gonna take a moment to go kick it over. Now, the interesting thing I found about this plane is, I know its history and I know its capabilities and I know just how much power this thing has behind it, but it really surprised me how much runway it needs to get in the air. It's just kind of one of those things. Give everybody a victory wiggle there, and let's go. So what we do is we come up to half power here, and we wait to see that our stuff in the back, we want those little valves and vanes to settle. They're going to open nice and wide. And off we go. That's what I'm talking about. So we're looking for a rotate at about $1.50 here, 150 knots. Rotate's real easy on this. You just pull back just a little bit, and you just sort of hold it. It's about 7.5 degrees, and the aircraft comes up. We're going to get rid of the landing gear immediately. Also going to get rid of the flaps immediately because we don't want to snap them off. We're going to pitch up a little bit here. And we're just going to take advantage of this thing's absurdly high power to wait for its age. All right, that is delightful. one thing we want to do is we want to come off a burner right away. So I'm going to pull the stick back just a little bit, and it's going to come off. Big way you know you're off a burner is if you look at my fuel consumption over here on the right. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see it. If I push this into burner, it just boing. You also notice that the nozzle position spikes. If I pull it back, it drops substantially. And again, you can see it. This will change as we kind of get on our way. So I'm going to leave it about the 3/4 point. Go ahead and execute a nice gentle right turn, and we're going to start bringing ourselves towards our course here. Now, one of the things that surprised me about the Phantom is I expected this thing to be not sensitive by any means, but like in a turn, you'll actually find that it's very, very... You have to pull back pretty hard. I guess that's kind of what I want to say. It's almost like it has less authority than you'd expect it to. You know, I've got the stick back. It's about halfway right now, and you can see even though we're unloaded here, and I think we're pulling... what do we got here for speed? We're doing about 425, which is pretty good. It's just, you know, just kind of chugging along. And if I pulled it all the way back... You can see all my stall warnings, and you can see this thing just lose all of its energy at the same time. Of course, bring us in the appropriate direction. Now, when you're flying a Phantom, there's a couple things you got to remember. First of all, fuel consumption, very high. And you can already see if you look down there on the right, we started with 11,000. You can see how much we've chewed through already. The second thing you need to know is speed. This thing thrives on speed, needs speed to be successful. So, for example, if we wanted to go ahead and get ourselves a little bit of altitude here, I'll go ahead and stomp on the throttle. What you would do, of course, is you'd use a standard climb profile. So I'm going to look at this thing, just kind of sit here for just a moment here, building up a little bit of speed. You can see I'm coming up with Mach 0.7. And then what you would do is you just go ahead and give this thing a nice little tug, and you're going to try to hold it between Mach 0.8 and Mach 0.9. So I'm just pulling back just a little bit more. And you can see I've got about Mach 0.8 there. I can actually pull back even more than this. About a 30-degree climb. You're going to see the needle start going the other direction in a second. There it goes. So we're about a 40-degree climb, and we're doing almost 0.9 there. So again, I'll pull back a little bit more. We're very, very lightweight. And this is holding pretty nice. Now, if I look out the window, you can see we're basically a rocket ship. And there we go. We're just going to hold that gently. And once we get a little bit higher, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start letting the nose kind of come back here, because we don't want to lose all that energy we just accumulated. It won't take much, by the way. Hold it down. Like I said, just let it come down. About 0.8 is going to be our minimum. We don't really want to go under 0.8, otherwise we get a really high angle of attack when we come out of this climb here. And I'm going to hold it. It looks like about 20 degrees. You can see I'm doing about 0.83. If you're wondering what I'm looking at, it's right here. This is our Mach number. And this is still pretty good. Pull back just a little bit to find that sweet spot. You can see we've already crossed 30,000 feet. Like I said, this thing is really, really, really high performance when you're not carrying anything. About 36, and we'll come up with that in a second. And this is a pretty darn good speed. And the top speed, of course, of the F-4 Phantom is about Mach 2.2. So that's pretty high, and that would take us a very, very long time to get to. So we were not going to push it or race it or anything like that. But as you can see, as I look out my window, that was just a few seconds, and we're nice and comfortably high here, and kind of heading in our general direction of our destination here, which is absolutely awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and push the nose down. We're going to do the best we can to kind of catch it. It's kind of a little tricky. It gets a little thick, is what I want to call that when you get to altitude. It's a little awkward to steer. You'll know exactly what I mean, especially because the stick authority is very limited. And when you feel that the first time, you'll be like, why am I pulling the stick back almost to my chest in order to maintain altitude? It's like, yeah, that sounds about right. Go ahead and tap a couple more taps of nose up right there. Looks delightful. I'm going to go ahead and press the Engage Automatic Pilot button, which is a separate button. Now, the AFCS here, it's pretty neat. They have different modes, and of course, we can turn them all on individually. That's not going to do anything here. But we have a couple things. We have the ability to lock onto our course. We have the ability to kind of kick everything on, and then we have an altitude mode. So I'm going to go ahead and flip those two, and that's going to lock our altitude to whatever altitude it's settled to. Now, keep in mind, when I was flying here, I didn't settle the altitude very smoothly. I was basically goofing around at flight level 360 there. And as it tries to resettle itself, it's going to basically have the same problem with the control authority that I had a few moments ago. That's actually very realistic to this particular plane. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let everything settle, and it's actually doing a really nice job here. It's finally starting to just catch up here. And again, our center of gravity on this thing is, because of the way it's designed, is back a bit. And one of the things I think is incredible already is our destination is basically over here. And you can get an idea of just the absurd performance of this aircraft, even though, you know, it's a relatively older plane. Because I'm not gushing or anything. It's just really cool. So let's take advantage of the fact that we're going pretty fast here. We're doing 0.9. Basically, not quite super cruising, but I'm pretty close to it. Let's go ahead and push the throttle all the way forward there. And you can feel, even though we have a lot of altitude underneath us right now, it does not take much to get this thing to pick up speed. And you can see there's Mach 1. And the best part of Mach 1, of course, is it's very quiet over here. It's just like kind of like a rushing, gusting wind. And of course, when we come behind it, they did that so accurately. All right, so we're going to enjoy our nice, relaxing flight here. I'll do about 0.2 here, or 0.2 over, I should say. And this is kind of one of the start to appreciate some of the things that the F4 does well, and those things it doesn't do well. Of course, I love the fact they give us these little mirrors that I like what they did here. They don't do anything, but they're kind of cool. And we get a beautiful view of coming out of Massachusetts. I mean, I can zoom in all the way. I love the little details here. You can see there's Wyndham Airport just sort of chilling. Of course, off our right there, you can see Block Island just kind of hanging out. I'm not used to flying at this altitude in Connecticut. I'm usually a GA guy. And we can see we're coming up on Rhode Island with no time at all. Like I said, it takes up very, very little to get this thing going. I like the autopilot on this one because it will kind of hang on to things while you're doing other stuff. Like right now, it's doing a really, really nice job of keeping me level as I'm starting to pick up my speed here and tearing towards my top speed. Obviously, we have no external fuel tanks, so we don't have any weapons or anything like that that they gave us. So that's perfectly fine, like I said. But you can see the distinctive kind of little like crank to the airplane. How it goes up and then it goes back down again. It's just so neat. One of those things. And you can see my angle attack is chilling pretty smooth here. All right, let's see here. We're coming up at 1.4. It's time to start thinking about descent in a few moments here. Like I said, it's a relatively short flight. We're just, like I said, coming out here to Cape Cod. Make it nice and easy for us. I'm not going to do any fancy navigation or anything like that. But like I said, you could take all the time in the back to kind of sit there and program every single one of the details as far as... this is our original point, by the way. This is our TACAN station. That was at Barnes Air Force Base. But the interesting thing, like I said, is we could have taken all that time to program each individual one of those digits. I'll actually jump in the back seat. Let me show you what I mean by that. Oh, let's climb in the back real fast. Whoa! So my button for swinging around is also my button for that piece. But if I set this over to standby, I can click here. I can change what digit I'm looking again. It makes it very difficult to see what you're working on because of the way that Flight Sim does these little things where it gets in the way. But you can see by clicking the button, I can change what digit I'm on, and you can dial it in directly. Hit that button, and now we go ahead and pop that sucker on for the purposes of basically flying us away. And I love how the radar's got a little button down here and everything like that. Speaking of the radar, one of the things I wish the radar did, which would have been pretty cool, is when you go to map mode, you'll notice you don't see anything, but when you go to air-ground mode, it actually maps everything for you. So you can actually see that we just flew over Providence there. So it actually does a really faithful little map. And of course, we can go to the scale here, and I can tell you very confidently that we're massively off course here, which is no problem, because I can just go ahead and tap the autopilot off button, and we'll go ahead and take a nice gentle left turn and start swinging. One of the things you probably observed is the moment that I activated that view, you probably see that my screen got very, very chunky very, very quickly there. That's unfortunate because this would be super fun to plan the target attacks and stuff like that, kind of come around. And of course, I let go of my controls. This thing's going to auto level itself, which is fine because we told it to do that. And of course, our destination. This is so handy that we can just kind of zoom in and sort of play the game. It's going to be right down in here, which makes it a little bit simpler for us. So I'll bring the radar range in, and it's just so fascinating how they just sort of integrated stuff that was already in Flight Sim sort of into this. This is actually fairly not faithful. This would be like a bright yellow, but I'm not hating it. I think it's actually pretty cool. What do we get up to, by the way? You'll get a kick out of this. We're 2.1 right now, so we're moving pretty quick. I'll zoom out just a little bit here. I want to make sure I have enough time to descend. 2.4 is pretty fast, and there's our destination that you can actually see just chilling there down. And whoa, are we moving? Wow, that's faster than pretty much anything stock here. The F-18 that's stock cannot do speeds like this, which is a shame. And there's your destination. Not bad, right? So now we got to get this thing on the ground. And this plane, not that it's a handful to get on the ground or anything like that. It's just, I love this, man. The speed is great. Just for the speed of this thing, I love it. Getting this thing on the ground is a bit of a handful. And the reason it's a bit of a handful is not so much that it's like a bad plane to fly. It's just that the seating position is not great. And that's going to interfere with us. All right, let's get on the ground. So I'm going to go pull my throttle back, which is probably the last thing in the universe you'd want to do. And here we go. I had to show it to you. Smoke. Yeah, this beats the traffic going into Cape Cod, I gotta say. By the way, in case you're curious how much fuel we burnt, you can see here that we have 6,000 pounds left of our original 11,000 pounds. So we obviously had a pretty fun flight today. Want to hear a beep? I love that. Again, not study level, but competent and kind of fun. I really appreciate that. I don't know. I enjoy things like this. Some people I know are like, I want something with more detail or whatever. And trust me, I love detail too. But the same token is, I don't mind something that handles well. You know, if I shut the radar off, like you can see my frame rate is butter right now, which is perfect for us. Yeah, there's our airbase. So what was that, a 6-minute flight? That's what I'm calling performance. I really appreciate that. Obviously, at low altitudes, you're not going to go quite that fast. Oh, there's the tree. So this would be the alert tree. So like, you know, you'd have all your F-106s all queued up here, and in an emergency, they go right over the runway and take off immediately. So it's just kind of a neat little thing. And yes, we do have model speed brakes, and you can see they're just kind of folding out of the bottom there. Now, if I was a really, really mean person, what I would do is I come around and go bam, and make a very loud sonic boom right over everybody's houses. But I'm not going to do that. I'll be a good person, mostly. And we're going to have to level off in a second here. More than slow enough. All right, pull up the nose. And we're going to do a nice long left downwind here. Kind of make it nice and simple for us. And let's see our radar altimeter. It's about 1,000. That's fine. All right, let's bring it on in. So landing this thing, like I was mentioning before, it's interesting. It's not hard to land. It's just the visibility from the cockpit's not great. You know, it's kind of like the MiG-21 problem. And anybody's got a lot of extensive experience on that particular airplane knows exactly what I mean by that. You know, you're coming in doing, you know, 200 knots or something like that. We don't have to go that fast on approach with this thing. We did burn half a tank, so it is a little lighter now. But when we land, it's basically an AOA indexing kind of a plane. You know, you just kind of set the indexer right, and then just play the am I about to hit the end of the runway kind of game. One thing I do like to do when I land with this one is actually like to shut the sight off. I know that seems scandalous, but it does make it a little bit easier. You'll see what I mean when I come in the final here. All right, pull final. We're doing about $1.50. Undershot it. It's the real challenge for me is I really don't like to use track IR, but track IR really makes turns like that a lot simpler to do. Just gonna be easy on the gear. We'll pop down our flaps are going to come down the rest of the way. You can see everything's folding down. You can see we're good to go. I'm not going to put out the speed brakes or anything like that. Now, if you look out the nose here, you'll see just how hard it is to see. And now, if you look down below, you'll see this little thing in my AOA indexer says I'm about 20 degrees right now. We're at a high angle of attack. That just means we're high. So what I actually like to do is I like to move my head up a little bit, so it's a little easier to see out the nose here. Now we're pushing, it's about 15 units there. We need to come in a little bit. We're coming in very fast. Go to the right. You can hear me quiet here as I try to get this. We're moving very quickly. A little high. A little wide. We're going to hold the nose up. And the reason we're holding the nose up, of course, is just to create a little bit extra aerodynamic drag. Let the nose come down. And we're here. Fantastic. So we just spent about $5,000 for the taxpayer money to get out here and fuel alone. And yes, definitely kind of interesting. But the transition between ground effect and not ground effect, it's just so hard to get right in a flight sim. And that's one of those kind of fun little things. Even though it looks fast, even though it's the right speed, you know it is. This is a pretty neat plane. Like I said, you can get it off the Microsoft Marketplace. I certainly have fun with it. It is carrier landing capable for those of you who have the Super Carrier mod. But that would be a video for another day. Enjoy.